Teddy, can you look at the camera? Oh, thank you. Right. Okay. Have you got something to say for our audience? What have you got to say? Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's a hello from Teddy and from me. And welcome to Pets Talk to our guest, Allie Bender. Hello, Allie.
Hello. It's nice to see you again.
It is lovely to have you back. Now, last time you were here, we were talking about enrichment, and we were talking about it in more general terms.
Yes.
So I thought it would be lovely to have you back, and maybe we can talk more practically about things that people can do to work with their dogs and help them to be happier.
Sounds great.
So now, first of all, your book, Canine Enrichment for the Real World, is full of lots of good practical things that people can do. And I just wanted to point that out straight away.
Thank you.
So I think maybe what might be nice would be to have some little ideas, simple things that people could do to help in different aspects of natural behaviors that dogs engage in. So one of the things that I thought was so wonderful in your book is that you talk a lot about the importance of giving dogs choice.
Yeah.
So that they have a sense of, not just being told what to do. Because if you think about dogs left in a natural setting where there aren't people, they've got choice, they've got freedom, it's up to them when they're going to eat and what they're going to, well, assuming they've got food and what they're going to look for, but they'll engage in foraging, whatever. The world is up to them. Whereas for us, for our dogs, well, Teddy knows that it all depends on me.
Yes.
And so in order to be fair to Teddy, I give him as much choice as possible so that, he has freedom.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest could be some simple ways for people to allow their dogs to have some choice in their lives without getting themselves killed?
Yeah. Yes. And that's a really good point, that giving choice doesn't mean unlimited freedom. It means providing choice in healthy, safe, and appropriate ways so that they're not going to get themselves hurt or anybody else hurt either. So it is not about unlimited freedom. So I think there are a few ways that people can provide more choices in their pet's life. And one of the simplest is just, where do they sleep? There are so many times where I'm working with a client and they say, my dog sleeps with me. I close the door to my bedroom. They have to be there the entire night. And for some of those cases, I ask them, what happens if you open the door and they can choose where they sleep at night? And for some of those dogs, it's usually they continue sleeping in that person's bedroom. But a lot of times they find that their dog wanders and goes elsewhere. I had one family who the dog was sleeping with one of the kids at night, and bedroom door closed and all of that. And then when they opened the door, they learned that the dog would spend equal time in each of the kids' rooms, which is the cutest thing that I've ever heard. And so, and it was such a good bonding experience for the kids too. They were like, oh, the dog is choosing to sleep with me, as opposed to they don't have another choice there. So it helped with the relationship too in that household. But I think that's a really simple thing that people can do, is letting their dog choose where they sleep at night, and also throughout the day as well. I tell people with Oso, he has multiple beds here and the couch and our bed. He can sleep wherever he wants to. And what I recommend for that is observe where your pet is already choosing. Are they somebody who really likes the sunspots? They're kind of more of a cat in that way than a dog. And put their bed there. I have a team member who moves her dog's bed along with the sunspot throughout the day if when she's working in her office. And just like little simple things like that where they can sleep where they want to is, I think, a really easy thing and a low stakes choice that our pets can have, that it doesn't matter to me where my pet sleeps as long as he's happy. So I think that's one of them.
I like that. And well, Teddy made his choice very clear to us. Um, he didn't like his bed. He liked our bed. And so there created a bed for him that's like ours. So we got a futon mattress and we cut it so that it was the width of our bed.
Yeah.
And I got an old quilt. So basically it looks like a human bed. And then we went further. We got an old table, cut the legs so that it's the height of our bed. So it looks essentially like the extension of our bed.
Yes.
Everybody gets a good night's sleep.
I love that idea.
So yes, Teddy has a bespoke human/dog bed at the bottom of ours. And he did choose, he made it very clear. And he does have beds throughout the day. But funnily enough, when you were talking, I wasn't thinking so much about him, but about our last cat who was deaf. And we would start the day every day with a tour of the house, because she was very elderly and frail when she came to us. And so she never went out. She was apart from the garden. She was always in the garden. But she had a big thing about where she wanted to sleep, except she wanted me to accompany her while she choice. And we would be walking through the house and I'd be saying, okay, well, how about here? And I'd be making suggestions and I could hear her going, no, that's really not it. And I know that what she was looking for was the sunniest spot. So yes. I would take her to where the lightest parts of the house at that particular time of day, until she finally would decide, okay, this will do now. And that would be it for the morning. She would be fine. So you're right. That is a very simple thing, but to them, it means so much, because after all, don't we want to choose what sofa we're sitting on?
Absolutely.
Choices, we
Absolutely.
choose room is going to be our room when we move into a house, etc.
Yes, exactly. And such a low stakes way, when I'm talking with clients about giving their animals choice, it can be scary for people for some people, they have to completely make a mindset shift of how they interact with their animal and all of that. And so that's one of those ways where there's not a lot of pushback with that. It's such a simple idea.
So, any other ideas for choice?
Absolutely. Something that's a little bit harder to do. Last time you and I were talking about communication and relationship and all of that. And so I think some of the things we were talking about last time can go into this really nicely too, of having those conversations with our animals so that they can ask us very specifically what they want and what they don't want. And we can provide it if we're the only way that they can get the thing that they're asking for. So an example of this is with my guy, Oso. He, in training, he has a signal to me that says, I'm done with this. I'd like to move on. He has a couple of signals depending on what it is that we're working on. And one of them is this head down behavior. So he just rests his chin on the floor. Usually he's lying down for that behavior. And that's something that I taught him. I just taught him as a fun trick for mental exercise and all of that. And I started seeing this, the first time I started seeing that behavior as a request behavior was when we were working on his nail file board. He has a nail file board that we use for his front nails, so I don't have to clip them. Life is good. But the thing with a nail file board is that he has to be able to control when we stop that exercise. I can't just ask him to continue filing his nails forever, because eventually he would get quicked and hurt and, all of that. And so I started seeing this head down requesting behavior during that exercise. Clearly, he has to join in on the conversation today. um, but I started seeing it then, where we would do it a few times and then he would lie down, put his head down, be like, no, I don't want to. And I would ask him again, scratch. And he said, no, I don't want to. And he would say that by putting his head down. And in the beginning, I said, okay, you must just be done with training. And it took me a while. Humans are slow sometimes on the uptake when it comes to what our pets are asking of us. And I am no exception to that. And so it took me a while to realize that he wasn't done with training. He just wanted to do something else, but he didn't want the session to end. And so eventually I started seeing that as we're done with the nail file board. I would ask him if he wants to do something else. I would bring out a different item to work on, or just start asking for other cues. And that enthusiasm bounced right back. He was like, yes, I still want to interact with you. I still want to train. I just don't want to do that particular thing. And so that requesting behavior has been pretty generalized at this point now. He uses it for a lot of things, but he uses it especially in training to tell me, I don't want to do that anymore. I'd like to do something else. Or he also uses it to communicate with me that I'm not being a good teacher in that moment, that he's frustrated. He doesn't know what I want from him. Maybe I'm a little sloppy with my mechanics in that moment, or I'm not treating enough, or I'm not splitting my steps down small enough, whatever it is. But he will do that too. And he's like, I don't know what you want. I'm just going to put my head down until you figure out that you're the problem here. So, so when we're talking about choice, that's a way that he has a lot of choice in his training sessions with me. For those training sessions, I'm using them to teach him behaviors that I want to see from him. And realistically, at the point where he is in his life and in his training journey and everything, it's mostly cooperative care stuff that we're working on. Everything else is fun, mental exercise, just silly things that we like to do together. And but he has the ability to say, like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'd like to move on. And that gives him so much agency in his training sessions, and allows me to be a better teacher for him.
Actually, that's such a good point. Just by us observing and being sensitive to what they're saying to us.
Yes.
And then respecting it is a means of giving them choice. That
absolutely
is true. And I know that, when we were doing agility, Teddy would ask for breaks, and his way of asking for breaks was his mind would wander, he'd be sniffing, and our lovely teacher would say, okay, time for a break. And then we'd get chatting, she'd be preparing, what we were going to do next, and he'd be back and he'd be by us going, right, ready to go now. He'd bark,
yeah.
Go, ready to go now. And that's all he wanted. He just wanted a break. And I just recently, I forget now what I was doing. I was playing a game that he enjoys, but he'd clearly had enough because he went and grabbed another toy and brought it over. And I thought, oh, okay, we're done. So I asked him to do one little thing so we could end on a high, and off we went onto his chosen game. So you're right, just by observing and being flexible,
yes,
that is giving them choice. And of course, this is one of the things that's going to help them to be confident dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a thing that obviously there's some skill that has to happen on the human front of being able to make those observations and really see it in the moment for what it is, and be able to really internalize that all behavior is purposeful and trying to figure out what is the purpose of this behavior right now and be able to respond in the moment. And that takes a lot of, of skill and time and repetition and all of that sort of stuff. That's not something that I would expect somebody with a brand new dog to be able to do with them. It's a long time to develop that relationship with somebody.
It is. And, I can remember, in the first year, in the first 2 years, attending lots of different workshops and looking at these wonderful trainers that I was involved with. And I would look at the way they read Teddy, and I was just in awe, because it was like magic. They might as well have been reading, a book in some sort of magical language. And then one day, you know how we were told, watch the ears going back, and well, that works really well unless your dog's got floppy ears like mine.
Yes.
And and I could never see what his ears were doing very easily. And one day I was with one of these wonderful trainers, and she said, he's actually very hard to read. And I thought, oh, thank you so much for saying that.
It's not just me.
He is hard to read, and he's pretty inscrutable at times. Obviously I've got better because we've had 6 years together.
Yeah.
So and it's been constant learning for me. And well, he just had me sussed, I think, from day one, but it's taken me a long time. So
Yes.
so yes, what we're saying is, don't expect yourself to get it right immediately, but watch and do your best, and you will work it out.
Exactly. I mean, and that's true with the humans in our lives too. It takes a while to develop that relationship and be able to understand what somebody needs to that level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, that's probably one of the more important things we could say about choice. Unless, is there anything else, any other tip that's important?
I think one of the biggest tips for choice is letting go of our need to control things and trusting our animal. I know, which is a big ask, especially depending on the animal. And so, what I recommend to people is, if you don't trust your animal to make the desired choice in a situation, then it's not that we just, say, oh, they could never do it, et cetera. We can teach the skills so that they can make the desirable choice in that moment, so that we can open up their world a little bit. I'm not saying just like open the floodgates right now. Many choices require skill behind them and training behind them. But there are a lot of choices that we as humans try to control that really don't impact us at the end of the day. I tell my clients, or I ask my clients, is this a hill you're willing to die on with your pet? And usually the answer is no. Like choosing where you walk with your dog, is that a hill you're willing to die on, where it has to be where you want to go and your dog can't choose where they want to go? Aside from traffic and safety and all of that, there are restrictions there. But if that's hard for people to do that, start small. Start with something that truly does not impact you at all, like where does your pet sleep, or let them choose the type of treats that you use to train with. Do a food preference test or a toy preference test. Do something small that gives your pet some choice, and work up to those bigger things, like being able to choose where they go for a walk, or being able to have that conversation during training, and being okay with your pet saying, no, I don't want to do that, and saying, okay, cool, let's move on to the next thing.
It's funny what you're talking about, where they want to walk. So it used to be that I did a pavement walk first thing in the morning and in the evenings. And we had our big, what I would call the fun walk, the big fun walk in the middle of the day. By year 2, the pavement walk had gone.
Yeah.
Went because Teddy finds it boring. He really genuinely is not interested in doing a pavement walk.
Yeah.
He would prefer that I do some scent training or something indoors rather than the pavement walk, which he finds completely unrewarding. And he was very clear about it. We'd be out of the house for maybe 2 minutes and he'd be going, "Can we go home now?" and, and I'd be going, "Yeah, but we haven't done our walk." And he'd say, "Yeah, I know, but hey, I'm really let's go and do something else now." So it's very, what is it about pavement walks he doesn't like? Well, okay, there are lots of smells, but he's not free. He's on the lead, and he's not a dog that enjoys being on the lead. I'm not sure that dogs enjoy being on the lead. I wouldn't enjoy being on the lead.
It's a skill.
And okay, he walks beautifully on the lead most of the time now. That is not the case in the early days when I would watch. I remember a moment in which there was a woman with a pram and her dog and shopping, and she was walking along the pavement like a sane person, and and this dog was just walking along behind her, and that seemed like an impossibility to me in the first
Yeah.
year, because Teddy just needed to mature a little bit. And so this was the thing. He now walks nicely on the lead, but there's a limit as to how much he's going to want to do it.
Yeah.
He prefers to be in the woods where I can let him off, and he can run around. Actually, most of the time he's by my side. But he's by my side by choice. And I think that's the other thing, isn't it? So choosing where you walk, it can be as simple as that. And I like that in your book you say, if you're out on a walk with them, let them choose the trail that you're going to take, if it's possible. And I love that. I love that idea of just letting him have some of that. So yes, I think there are things that we can do that are very simple. And let them tell us what they prefer. So that's really nice. Now, this brings us to exercise, and there are lots of fun things we could do for exercise, aren't there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the interesting thing with exercise is, we have, some of us, I now have a senior dog, so this isn't as true for me as it is for other people, but some folks have honestly four-legged athletes in in their houses and are expecting a 20-minute walk to be sufficient physical exercise for them. And so I think one of the hard things for folks when it comes to physical exercise is really being able to see with their eyes and not their ideas, and being able to see, I went on a 20-minute or even an hour-long walk and I come home and my dog is still bouncing off the walls. Then it's like, all right, let's explore other options for us now that are more perhaps aerobic, maybe some strength training, something that's more for our animals, especially the ones that are little athletes that we live with. So with physical exercise, I'm usually recommending things like fetch and tug and flirt pole and games that people can play with their animals, but games that are more physical exertion than a walk typically is. And not that walks are bad or walks that can't be physical exercise. They absolutely can, but we have to look at the individual and say, is this true for the animal in my house? Yes or no? And then make a decision from there. So a lot of times I'm recommending games to people. And this may not be as true for you in the UK, but for me in the Chicagoland area, our weather is crazy. So in the summer, it can be 90 degrees and like 95% humidity, and it is just gross and nobody wants to be outside. And in the winter, like now, it can get down to, a Fahrenheit Sorry, I realized who I was talking to. And I cannot convert Fahrenheit to Celsius very well in my head, so I apologize for that. Um, and then in the winter, 0 degrees Fahrenheit, -10 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, miserable, and nobody wants to be outside. And so with the clients that I'm working with, I tell them, make sure your plan is sustainable for the entire year and that you have options for the entire year. Because right now, this time of year, every single year that I've been a consultant, I have, the clients who had started working with me before the winter are coming to me and saying, we're having regressions and everybody's a little stir crazy. And it's because what was working for them in the summer is not going to work for them in the winter, at least here. That's true. So that's what I tell people is make sure that your plan is sustainable for the entire year, and sustainable for not only the weather, but also your time restrictions throughout the year. What's true for your time and bandwidth in summer vacation mode is not the same as holiday mode. And so have a lot of different options for physical exercise so that you always have something to pull from your toolbox, whether it's, 10 minutes of flirt pole or 20 minutes of fetch, or for Oso in the winter, sometimes it's just we toss treats up and down our hallway until he gets tired.
It's about get that engagement and involvement, because it's not just the physical, it's also the mental stimulation. So that's why, agility was so great for Teddy, because it made him think, and whilst he was, and that's why he needed breaks. And that's why every time we finished, I would then take him out for a walk in which he could just, sniff and do whatever he wanted, because it's that level of concentration is very tiring. But you were talking about flirt poles and tug, and lots of people are afraid because they think their dog's going to go bananas, if they're playing tug, because they get very excited. But actually, it was the most useful game I had to teach Teddy to control himself.
Yeah. Yes.
It really was, because he loved playing it, and it was one of the things that I used to teach him a drop cue, because if he didn't drop it, the game ended. And so he very quickly would drop it, and then I would toss it back to him and we would go again, and then I'd say drop it, and he had to drop it, because if he didn't, I left the room.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah.
hear a little bark that would go, come back, I'll drop it now.
Wait a second.
Yeah, I changed my mind. And I'd go back and we'd start again, and that was one of the things. And and occasionally, if he caught my hand by accident, because it always would be, I would react quite genuinely, going ouch, kind of thing. And that would stop him immediately, because he'd go, and you could see he was going, uh-oh. And then he'd wait a little bit, and then I would reassure him that I was okay. But it taught him to be more careful as well. And so so if we do it right, and if we are in control of ourselves, that's what I learned, is that if I'm in control of myself and I'm not hyping him up, it's fun. But then he's not too hyped up and he's learning self-control. That was a big lesson for me.
Absolutely. And I get that question all the time. I primarily work with dogs displaying aggression, and for folks who have a dog who, and I don't like the term aggression, because there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but for lack of a better term at the moment, for people who are coming to me who have dogs with bite histories and and who are displaying aggression, and I say, let's play tug, and they say, are you nuts? Why would I do that? But I tell them, I play tug and flirt pole with dogs with aggression all the time. And as you said, it can, when done right, when done correctly, when done with forethought and purpose and rules and all of those important things, it can really, really help with teaching some self-control, teaching other skills like a drop it. I use weight for a flirt pole. Actually, I use weight for both tug and flirt pole. So you can absolutely use them. And, I believe there's only been 2 studies. So 2 studies does not, a generalization make, but the couple of studies that have been done on tug have not shown significant results as far as increasing aggressive behavior.
No, I would imagine that would be the case. So, okay, we've got lots of different sports, for instance, like agility and canicross and so on, which could be good in terms of physical exercise.
Yeah.
What could we do about mental stimulation?
Yeah. For mental stimulation, and here's the thing. I am a work smarter, not harder person. So if I can do one exercise that is going to meet multiple needs and multiple criteria, that's the exercise that I'm going to do. So with mental exercise, a lot of times I'm building it into other things. Like you mentioned, that agility isn't just physical exercise, it's also mental exercise. For the kiddos where walks do help them relax and all of that, a lot of times it's mental exercise as opposed to the physical that they're getting. But one of the things that I do a lot for mental exercise is some sort of scent work. And whether that is a more formalized canine nose work program or as simple as chucking some treats out onto the ground or the grass and telling them to search for them, that is my go-to for mental exercise. The difficulty level doesn't change, which is nice. One of the issues with store-bought food puzzles is they do it a few times, depending on the dog, either a few or a lot of times, and then they figure it out, and it's not mental exercise anymore. Now it's just a fun thing to do to keep them busy. And I'm not knocking food puzzles. I feed Oso out of food puzzles because it takes him longer to eat that way. And because there's still a little bit of there's more than just eating out of a bowl. He's still getting something out of it, but it's not nearly the mental exercise that's going to go into, say, like a scent work activity, and the difficulty level doesn't diminish over time. They get better at tracking and trailing scents, but it's still mental exercise, even if they're better at it. So that is my go-to. And it's mental exercise. It can be foraging if they're searching for food. It's a species typical behavior. For a lot of individuals, it's a calming exercise. So it's definitely a work smarter, not harder exercise. And so it's my go-to for that.
You're talking about things that you combine, and it's put me in mind, again, this would have been in Teddy's first year. He's never been a real fetch dog. Oh, he brings me things. No question. He'll bring me all sorts of things. He hunts out treasure, as in litter now, and brings it to me to be rewarded. So it's not that he doesn't like bringing me things. It's ball throwing that other dogs get really hyped up by and excited. For him, it's do it 2-3 times, we're done. Except in the first year where he discovered, and I realized afterwards that it's because he liked chewing the balls. There were these balls that he really liked, and it was because he liked chewing them. And then, of course, I read that it wasn't because, they're that rough, like tennis balls.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for their teeth. And then, of course, he stopped having them all together. But there was a problem because he enjoyed that. And I liked using them, to throw, to bring back, because it was increasing his physical exercise while we were out. Except he became extremely possessive of them. And then would get aggressive if other dogs came. And then he wouldn't want to give me the ball either. So yeah. I created a game, and the game was very simple. It was throw the ball, hide some food, tell him to find the food. He drops the ball, I grab the ball, he finds the food, I throw it. And that way I taught him that he would always get the ball back if he gave it to me, no matter what. And he was doing scent at the same time. We had so much fun with that.
Yeah.
And I think that if we're a little bit creative, we can do things like that. And it's so rewarding is all I would add, is that it's very rewarding. I think in those walks, when I used to do that with him, it was great. It's really hard to do anything with him like that now, because he's anticipating what I'm going to do. And unless there's somebody with me to distract him, I can't hide anything, because he's watching for what I'm going to do. So now it's a two-person job, where I hide in order to have any kind of scent work while we're out. But that's the level of fun that we're talking about. They do love that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so many variations of games and ways that you can combine things that it's limitless. I get asked all of the time about new activities or new exercises that people can do with their animals. And realistically, there's nothing really new under the sun. Everything is just a combination of other things and taking the pieces that you love from something and combining it with something else. And so I challenge folks to think of different ways to do what they're already doing, instead of looking for, this magical new way that really doesn't exist.
Hide and seek, or as I call it, peekaboo.
Yeah.
If we're out and there's nobody around and I feel comfortable that we're safe, I will, it's funny because because I can't hide anything, as I've already said, because he's always watching me, so I can't really hide. So what I do is I ask him to sit and stay, and I'll go off, and then I'll disappear behind a bush or something, and I'll call out peekaboo, and he comes and finds me. Or if I'm with someone else, they distract him, I go and hide, he comes and finds me. One of the most fun days we had was with with a friend of ours who's got two boys, and they were busy hiding and calling out peekaboo all over the place. And there he was, looking for them. It's fun. It's more exercise that will tire them out.
Mm-hmm.
So now there is another issue, though, is that one of the reasons they can come home and still be bouncing off the walls is because they are so excited still.
Yes.
So tell us about calming and the need for calming exercises and games.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics, honestly, because it's something that is overlooked in the pet world. And really, that's why it's its own category in our book. When we were doing the research on enrichment and looking at the different categories, because we didn't make this up, that we got everything from research and work that had already been done. And in those categories that already existed, calming was a part of another category. And as we were writing the book, and what happened was that one chapter was very much actually two chapters. Calming was a part of environment, and when I wrote the environment chapter, I was like, this is two chapters that I put into one. So we Emily and I discussed pulling calming out, not only because of just the logistics of how that chapter was going, but also because it's so overlooked in the pet world that we really wanted to bring it to the forefront by pulling it out and giving it its own category, which I think it kind of rightly deserves its own category. I mean, it's so huge and vital for the pet world, and not just the pet world, but like I said, more overlooked, I think, in the pet world than in other industries. And so when people see their animals bouncing off the walls like that, a lot of times they're thinking, I need to do more. I need to do more physical exercise. I need to do more mental exercise. I need to run them longer. Whatever it is, they're looking at more. And that's really unsustainable for a pet parent to do. And a lot of times, as you said, the answer is less. It's we need to do less of those things. Let's not build an athlete beyond what they already are by providing another mile of run time onto it. Um, let's teach them how to be calm, how to self-regulate, how to sleep. Sometimes I have a lot of clients who have animals that do not have good sleep schedules. And that is one of the first things that we are looking at is how do we build in more nap times? How do we get them to be sleeping throughout the night? Because, you know, even in humans, we can use ourselves as an example. We don't have to look any further than ourselves to know that this is true, that if we are not sleeping well, we are not at our best. And a lot of our pets hit this, I call it the overtired, cranky toddler stage, where you can tell they are tired and they are still going a million miles a minute. And for those animals, we really need to teach them how to shut off, self-regulate, calm down, all of it. So I think calming is something that more folks need to pay attention to and incorporate and be more mindful of with their animals.
So building in nap times. Now I can go back yet again to Teddy's first year, and he had not read the manual that said that puppies sleep a lot.
Yes.
And I can remember having, because he had a crate at that point, and bringing the crate into the lounge and introducing nap time. So covering the crate and discovering that that only lasted for about 2 minutes. And then he'd be whining that he wanted to come out. And I think I discovered that if I let him out, he was so happy to be out that he would just sleep on the sofa next to me. So that was my trade-off. But certainly the crate became a cue that it was nap time until it wasn't needed anymore.
Yes.
So what would you recommend for those who have cockapoo puppies who haven't read the manual about sleep?
Yes.
Many puppies are like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of pets who have not read that manual. I like kids too. There are a lot of kids who didn't read that manual. Yeah, so I love what you were saying of you built it into the routine with him of this is now our nap time and having environmental cues for this is now nap time. And so sometimes the answer is just as simple as make sure it's part of your routine that there is a nap time. And whether that is we use the crate for nap time or we put them in a bedroom and close the door or whatever that needs to look like, make sure that we build it into the routine, especially for puppies. Sometimes it's really just that simple. For other animals, depending on the household, some households are better for afternoon naps than other households are. So, for example, my household, my husband has a job that brings him out of the house. I work from home. Also snoozes the entire day that I'm home. I'm usually in my office. He's on the couch. We're not bothering each other, and so he gets to sleep. My household is primed for afternoon naps. A household with young kids, though, is not so primed for for afternoon naps. And so sometimes in addition to building that into the routine, it's also getting everybody on board with this is a vital part of especially new puppies needs and well-being. So making sure that I laugh because I have some clients who have several kids, and they tell me that it's just like a revolving door where one kid will play and then go off and do their own thing, and then a few minutes later another one of their kids will come and play, and so each of the kids is getting a very reasonable amount of playtime. But when we multiply that by several several playtimes, poor puppy is just like, oh my goodness. It's been hours of playtime now. So sometimes it also means getting everybody in the household on board with how important nap time is. But for those kiddos who really don't have that skill set, then teaching them how to be calm. And there are a lot of different ways to do that, whether it's through a relaxation protocol or teaching deep breathing or pairing an environmental cue with sleep and then being able to use that cue at other times. There are a lot of ways to do that. And I'm being purposefully a little vague with that, because if somebody has an animal who truly cannot self-regulate, they should be working with a professional for that animal.
Yes, indeed. So I think I think that the issue of routine is a really key one. And I think because having been a teacher, I understood that about children. It was very natural for me to split the day into segments for Teddy. So there was activity, there was food, there was rest, and activity, food, rest, and that was 3 times a day that we did that. And then I'm fortunate enough in my work to be able to schedule and be flexible so that Teddy's needs are met. And of course, now he's a little bit older, it's a little bit easier still. So I think this is crucial. And yes, I'm extremely lucky because this is, a 2-adult household. So we don't have to. And I feel for anyone who's got young children and is trying to implement this. But one thing I would say is that the children benefit from routine too. So
Absolutely.
Get the children into the routine and the dog into a routine is going to make everybody's life a lot happier. So other situations where calming is needed, in my experience, tend to be out in public, pubs, restaurants. Oh my, the only way that I could get Teddy to be calm is to sit him on my lap. Because if he's not on my lap, he wants to be exploring. And he doesn't understand why he can't be visiting everybody at all the other tables. And, yes, it's just too exciting. Visiting friends in their homes. Oh my goodness me. It's just the most exciting thing in the world. So yes, I used to, he still has his little lunchbox with, which would have a frozen Kong in and a bone and all sorts of entertainment. But I feel now looking back that I wasn't addressing the issue of teaching him to be calm.
Mm-hmm.
I think I failed there. I think what I did was I gave him something to keep him busy. And then when that finished, then he could come on my lap if need be. And of course, as he grew up, I couldn't feed him the same amount anymore because so my palate became restricted.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say about teaching them to be calm in those situations? I don't know that I'm ever going to have the dog that just sleeps under the table at a restaurant.
Yeah. And that's okay if that's not him.
It's not his personality. Or maybe it is. And maybe I've just failed to teach him that. I don't know. But what would you say?
Yeah. And to be fair, those, what you were describing, like the stuffed Kong and the bones and all of that, those are very valuable management tools, and management tools help bridge the gap between the environment that they're currently in and the skill set that they have. And so what you're describing is he didn't have the skills to be in the environment that he was. And so we needed some sort of bridge there in order to help marry the two. And I think one of the hardest things with teaching calm, and this is totally on the human front and not on hard on the dog front, is being able to work our way up to those situations. And so the first step is not we teach calm in the pub. The first step is we teach calm in the house when we have a guest over, or it's even for some animals that's too much, and we have to start even smaller than that and gradually working up, or a lot of times we say working through the grades. You know, if we're asking for a collegiate level behavior from a dog who's in kindergarten, it's just not going to work. And then we do need management tools to help bridge that gap. So so the best advice I can give for that is to start small, gradually build those skills until we get to the point where he could be a dog who can lie under the table in the pub. Is he happy doing that? That's a different question. and something we can, you know, keep in mind and look for, and all of that is to, like, is that a viable option for us? But building up to it is necessary,
isn't it? Because, you know, some dogs are just naturally very social and very, you know, and get very excited by being in social settings. And I would say that on the whole, he's very excited. I mean, in the house, he's an absolutely calm dog. It's been the case almost from day one. He's very calm inside the house. People come over, he's very, I mean, super excited about the first 15 minutes, and then he settles. So that's fine. It's, and I know that there are people out there watching this who will recognize all of this, but then take him into a setting that's not an everyday setting. And it's so much harder. And I bring a blanket with him so that he's got somewhere to sit, and it's this designated spot. But it's really very difficult. And I think one of the things is the restriction. He does not like the restriction. So if I'm on a picnic and I'm expecting him to, so I'll have the lead around the leg of the table or something, he finds that incredibly difficult. If I let him off the lead, when everybody's finished eating, preferably, then he's absolutely fine. He'll come and he'll sit next to me, or so it's that. So it's all, I guess what I'm saying is, when people are talking about needing a calm dog, there's all these different nuances. What is it? Is it the excitement, or is it the fact that he doesn't like being tethered? I've come to the conclusion with him that it's about 50-50, and that being tethered really is not his thing. It's
and you're right, there are so many nuances to it, and calm looks different to different people too. So you know, there are some people who are like, I want my dog to be here and not move at all, and that's what calm means to me. And there are other people that are like, anything short of jumping up and bouncing off the walls is calm. And so I think that's a piece of it too, is knowing what calm looks like is half the battle. You know, when somebody comes to me and says, I want my dog to be calm, and I say, what does that look like to you? And people have a hard time with that question, because being able to verbalize what that picture is in their head is not something that that we do a lot in daily life. You know, being able to verbalize that.
Yeah, and I think actually it boils down, I think what you're saying then, as a general advice for all of us, is help them to be calm at home. So if we're to summarize, it's play with them, engage with them, but also give them time where they're not being stimulated, and encourage them to use that time to sleep, etc. And then perhaps you've got a dog that is better prepared for dealing with the exciting situations. Perhaps it's not guaranteed that this is going to translate in my experience. But then maybe what I might have done when he was younger, and I guess the next puppy that comes along, my strategy may well be take him in regularly for short bursts and make it, you know, longer. What do you think? Do you think that might be a simple thing to do as well?
With a puppy, that I think is an option for us, of making it not exciting and not new and all of that. But I think the crux of it is really teaching the skill first before asking them to perform the skill.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So everything that we've, yes, I was having that in mind, that at home we've already got something that resembles, you know, which is of course why I bring his blanket, you know,
Yes.
call it the pub blanket, you know, or
Cute.
okay, you can rest. And I give him little things to do. And then when I finish eating, if he's still feeling restless, then he can come and rest on my lap. Um, so this is, it's a very, very tricky thing. Every dog is different. But I think what we're aiming for is a confident, not hyperactive dog. And
Mhm.
that's where all the different activities that we're talking about come in, because they add
Absolutely.
pictures. So when somebody says, well, why would it be important to give a dog a choice? You know, it's a dog. Do you want a frustrated dog or do you want a happy dog? I think it might be easier to live with a happy dog than a frustrated dog.
Yes.
You know, um, so what about things like recall? It seems to me that this, all of this feeds into making something like teaching recall easier. What do you feel? What would you say about that?
I think so. I mean, re- recall has a few layers to it. I think relationship is part of those layers. But a lot of times it just comes down to reinforcement history. Are you paying well enough for that behavior? And, you know, like all of us, like we do better jobs when we get paid better for it. And our dogs, you know, are not immune to the laws of the behavior sciences. So a lot of times it comes down to that reinforcement history, but there can be other things alongside that. In addition to how well we're paying, it can also be, you know, the affection and the praise and everything. What does our relationship look like outside of that situation? You know, if there are times where they come to us and we're cross with them, then they're like, I don't know that I love coming to you when you ask me to. Versus, you know, if we don't have that relationship with them, they're like, yeah, it's great to come to you. Like I get hot dogs and I get to go away. And the getting to go away part is so crucial for recalls as well. Of it really is a choice between two things. You get to come to me and you also get to go and continue doing whatever it is you're doing. It doesn't just stop the fun. And so there is that element of choice in there as well.
Indeed. And I think what I was thinking is that if the foundation for those skills that we want them to learn is our relationship with them, and it's the trust, it's the fun, it's all of that, which is why I was thinking all this that we're talking about helps feed into that, and it makes it easier. But I can tell you, as regards payment, when I was teaching Teddy recall before the age of 18 months, I was very popular with every dog but him, because no food could compete with the joy of following his nose. That was absolutely. That one, hands down, every time. And I used to walk around with freshly cooked liver. So you can, okay, Rolls Royce, as I say,
Yeah.
popular. Every dog that sniffed the liver as it went past. But Teddy could take it or leave it when he was outside. So it's and so I discovered that maturity had something to do with it, and also keeping him engaged in activities had something to do with it. I used a combination of things, but ultimately he just had to grow up a little bit.
Did you end up using like scent work as a reinforcer for him coming to you at some point?
Um, I still have, in order to make sure that he didn't gain weight, I fed him on the go. So his
Mm,
lunch always happens while we're out having our main walk. And what I did is I had a very, very long lead, like a super long lead,
yeah.
which of course meant that I was always covered in mud and filthy, but I didn't care. I used to let it trail so that he had a combination of freedom and I had some control. So yes,
Yes.
it get tangled up in bushes and trees and all the rest of it, but I didn't
Yep.
care because he had freedom, and then I could actually recall him. And I
Yeah.
by about 12 months, I think we were about 90% there, except if there were other dogs. And then, you know, it took a while. So I used to take him to places where it were very quiet and take him off lead completely. But it was 18 months when I had the confidence to put that lead away, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and that, so I, you know, we worked at it. I didn't just say, oh God, you know, that he's just going to have to. No, we worked on it all the
Yes.
time. Um, and and yes, you know, his lunch is still delivered while we're out on walks, but it's a much more relaxed affair.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's a great example too of giving him more choice and doing it in a safe way where it's not a free for all. We're not opening the floodgates. You know, he can choose, and also you can stop him if he's about to get into a dangerous situation.
He would have got into a dangerous situation. There's no question. Anyone who knew Teddy in those days would know what I was talking about. What would have happened is that he would have followed his nose and then wondered what had happened when he was, you know, the only dog or person left in the woods and it was dark.
Yes.
Be going, uh-oh, what happened? That, because he, to this day, I tell you, he has never seen a rabbit, even though rabbits have been right in front of him. And the reason is his nose is always on the ground, and that's it. That's his primary interest. So
Yeah.
so that's what we work with. We work with the scent to make things more exciting. So I've
Yeah.
been known to be hiding sprats, you know, under rocks and beaches, etc., to keep his attention
I love it.
focused. So it's so that's it, you know. Well, I hope that people watching are going to get your wonderful book, Canine Enrichment for the Real World, and that they are going to be inspired to have fun and play and be creative with their dogs as a result of having you as a guest on Pet Talk today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Wonderful. And thank you all for watching. And well, I'm not entirely sure what we're doing next time, but whatever it is, I'm sure you're going to find it a whole load of fun. Until then, goodbye.